What is a nation? Is it the language we speak, the land we inhabit, the stories we tell? Or is it something deeper?
For centuries, the origin of the Serbs, and indeed all the peoples of the Balkans, seemed to be a settled question, a foundational story, a grand, sweeping narrative of migration, of kings, and of a people forging a new homeland from the ashes of a fallen empire. The story we all learned in school begins here, in the 6th and 7th centuries. The mighty Roman Empire, split in two, had seen its western half collapse into chaos. Its eastern half, Byzantium, struggled to hold its frontiers, and from the vast forests and steppes of Eastern Europe, they came. They were known to the Romans as the Sclaveni and the Antae, the Slavs. Driven by forces we still debate, climate change, pressure from other nomadic groups like the Avars, or perhaps just opportunity, these Slavic-speaking tribes began a monumental human migration south. They crossed the Danube River, the great frontier of the Roman world, and pushed deep into the Balkans. The traditional narrative, the one written by historians, was one of replacement. We were told the Balkans had been left devastated and depopulated, emptied by the ravages of the Gothic Wars, plagues like the Plague of Justinian, and the collapse of Roman order. The Slavs, so the story went, simply moved in and filled this empty land. We have historical accounts, like De Administrando Imperio, written by the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, that tell this story. He wrote of the Serbs and Croats arriving at the invitation of the Emperor Heraclius to act as a buffer against the Avar Khaganate. It was a clean story. The old world fell, and a new people arrived to build a new one. Archaeology seemed to back this up. In the 20th century, archaeologists digging through the layers of the Balkans would find the grand ruins of Roman cities, and then, in the layer above, a sudden change. The material culture became simpler. They found new burial rites like cremation, and a different, less sophisticated style of pottery. This was taken as clear archaeological evidence of the Slavs' arrival. But a question always lingered, a ghost in the narrative. What really happened to the people who were there before? The millions of Romanized citizens, the Illyrians, the Thracians, the Dacians, who had lived in these lands for over 1,000 years. Did they all just vanish? For decades, history and archaeology had no definitive answer. The story was incomplete. And then, a revolution. A new kind of history, a new kind of archaeology. Not one based on pots or on the biased texts of emperors, but on a text written inside every cell of our bodies. The revolution of ancient DNA. What if we could find the bones of the people who lived before the Slavs, during the Slavic migration, and after, and read their genetic code? What if we could compare them, not just to each other, but to the DNA of people living in Serbia today? In 2023, a massive, groundbreaking study did exactly that. A team of scientists from Harvard University, the University of the Basque Country, and the Institute of Archaeology in Belgrade, led by geneticist Inigo Olalde, published their findings in the journal Cell. They had successfully sequenced the genomes of 146 ancient individuals from across the Balkans. What they found wasn't just a small correction to the old story. It was a complete rewriting of the history of the Serbian people. And it contained a revelation that would send shockwaves through our entire understanding of European identity. The truth was not replacement. It was something far more complex and far more shocking.
Before we can understand the revelation, we must understand the tool and the almost impossible challenge of using it. This is not CSI. You can't just swab a 1,500-year-old bone and get a result. Ancient DNA is the ghost of a ghost. When an organism dies, its DNA immediately begins to break down. The long, beautiful double helix shatters into millions of tiny, unreadable pieces. Worse, it gets contaminated. Over 99% of the DNA in an ancient bone isn't human. It belongs to bacteria from the soil, fungi, and us, the scientists and archaeologists. For decades, this contamination problem seemed insurmountable. But then, scientists discovered a genetic vault, a tiny, dense part of the skull that protects the inner ear, the petrous bone. It's the densest bone in the body, and it acts like a time capsule, preserving tiny fragments of ancient DNA, or aDNA, safe from the elements. In these clean rooms, which are more sterile than an operating theater, scientists extract this powder. They use a technique called next-generation sequencing. It's a shotgun approach. The machine rapidly reads every single fragment of DNA in the sample, the bacteria, the fungus, and the tiny broken pieces of ancient human. This gives them a digital file with billions of random genetic sequences. This is where the bioinformaticians take over. They use supercomputers to sift through this storm of data. They throw out everything that is clearly not human. Then, the real magic begins. They take the millions of short, broken human fragments and line them up against a complete, modern human reference genome. It's like solving the world's most difficult puzzle, with 99% of the pieces missing. But slowly, piece by piece, they reassemble the genetic code of a person who has been dead for millennia. And once they have that code, they can ask the questions. Who were your ancestors? Where did you come from? What was your eye color? And most importantly, who are your living descendants? This is the tool that the team led by Inigo Alalde pointed at the heart of the Balkans. They focused on key sites. The most important was Viminatium, a massive Roman city and military legionary fort on the Danube, right on the edge of the empire. It was the perfect place to look for answers. They sampled individuals from before the Slavic migration and from after. They also sampled modern-day Serbs. The plan was simple. Compare the DNA of the ancient Romans to the DNA of the arriving Slavs, to the DNA of modern Serbs. This would finally solve the mystery of replacement versus continuity. But the first thing they found was a surprise that no one saw coming. Before they could even get to the Slavs, the scientists looked at the DNA of the people living in Viminatium during the height of the Roman Empire, from the 1st to the 4th centuries, and the old image of a simple Romanized local population shattered.
The first shocking revelation of the 2023 study was this. Roman-era Viminatium was not just a city of local Illyrians or Thracians who spoke Latin. It was one of the most genetically diverse melting pots in the entire ancient world. They found individuals who were genetically not local at all. The study revealed a massive, large-scale influx of people of Anatolian ancestry. These were people from the Eastern Mediterranean, from what is now modern-day Turkey, living and dying on the Danube frontier as soldiers, merchants, and citizens. But that's not all. They also found individuals with ancestry from Central and Northern Europe. These were the so-called barbarians, people of Germanic or steppe ancestry who were also living within the Roman city, likely as federati or allied troops long before the final collapse. Other studies of the Roman Balkans have backed this up, finding individuals with clear North African ancestry from as far away as modern-day Sudan.
This paints a vivid picture of the Roman Empire, not as a European empire, but as a cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic state, where a soldier from Anatolia could be stationed on the Danube, and a merchant from Africa could raise a family in Serbia. But this incredible diversity led to the study's second major surprise: the missing Italians. Despite the fact that Rome ruled the Balkans for 600 years, establishing its language, its laws, and its legions, the scientists found almost no genetic contribution from people of Italic descent, barely anyone from the Italian peninsula itself. This is a stunning discovery. It means that Roman rule in the Balkans was not a settler colonial project. Rome didn't send millions of its own people to colonize the land. It was an empire of hegemony. It sent a tiny administrative and military class to rule, and the local indigenous pre-Slavic population, the Illyrians, Thracians, and Dacians, simply adopted Roman culture. They became Romans, but their DNA remained their own. And this is the key. This local, indigenous, pre-Slavic substrate, as the scientists call it, was massive. It was resilient. It absorbed Anatolians, Northern Europeans, and steppe nomads. It adopted Roman culture, it survived the fall of the empire, and it was there, waiting, when the first Slavic tribes began to cross the Danube. And so the stage was finally set. The greatest question in Balkan history could finally be answered. What happened when these two massive populations, the indigenous Romanized inhabitants and the incoming Slavic migrants, finally met? The answer is the shocking genetic origin of the Serbs.
This is the central finding of the 2023 study. The genetic origin of the Serbs is a story of a grand merger, a dual ancestry. The old story of replacement is dead. The scientists compared the ancient genomes to modern Serbs and found, clear as day, today's Serbs derive, on average, 50 to 60% of their ancestry from the Slavic migrants who arrived in the 6th and 7th centuries. This is the history we've always known, and the DNA confirms it as a massive demographic event. But the other 40 to 50% comes from the people who were already there, the indigenous pre-Slavic population. This is the shocking truth. The Slavic migration was not a wave that washed the old world away. It was a river that flowed into another equally mighty river. The two populations mixed, they intermarried, and over generations, they became a new, single people. The incoming Slavs brought their language, which would eventually dominate, but the indigenous people contributed an equal, and in some places greater, share of the genetics. And we can see the fingerprints of this exact merger today in the Y-DNA of modern Serbs. Y-DNA is a piece of genetics passed down only from father to son, like a genetic surname. It allows us to trace an unbroken paternal line back thousands of years. And in Serbs, two surnames dominate all others. The first is called haplogroup R1a. Its genetic diversity is highest in Eastern Europe, in the very Slavic homeland we talked about. This haplogroup is the classic, undeniable genetic signature of the Slavic migration. This is the DNA of the newcomers. It's found in high frequencies in all Slavic-speaking peoples, from Poles and Russians to Serbs. But the other dominant haplogroup is I2a, and its story is completely different. I2a is not from Eastern Europe. It is an ancient European lineage. It was born in Europe during the last Ice Age, over 20,000 years ago. Its highest concentration in the world is found right in the Dinaric Alps, in the heart of the Balkans. This is the DNA of the indigenous population. I2a is the genetic signature of the pre-Slavic peoples, the Illyrians, the Thracians, the people who survived the Ice Age and built the first civilizations here. The fact that these two genetic surnames, R1A and I2A, exist side by side in such high numbers is the merger. It's the event frozen in time, visible in the DNA of almost every Serb alive today. The Slav and the Paleo-Balkan merged into one. So the average Serb is a genetic composite, a descendant of Ice Age hunter-gatherers who became the first farmers, and a descendant of the Slavic warriors who migrated 1,500 years ago. But the other finding had one final and perhaps most sensitive revelation of all.
For the last century, and especially in the last 30 years, this region has been defined by its divisions, by separate identities, separate histories, and separate national stories, often in tragic conflict with one another. Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks. Three distinct peoples, three distinct identities. The scientists tested this, and the ancient DNA delivered a profound, unambiguous verdict. Genetically, there are no significant differences. The study, and multiple others before it, confirmed that Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks are, from a genetic standpoint, virtually indistinguishable. All three groups are the product of the exact same historical event. All three are a mere 50-50 mixture of the same Slavic migrant population and the same indigenous Balkan population. The DNA shows a genetic continuum, a smooth gradient of ancestry that flows across the entire region, completely ignorant of modern political or religious borders. The differences that have defined them, their religion, their national narratives, the cultural fault lines, are real. They are powerful. They are, historically, deeply important. But they are cultural and political, not genetic. The genetics tell a story of a single shared ancestry, a single shared origin. This is not a political statement. It is a biological fact. It's a scientific reality that stands in stark, poignant contrast to the 20th century history of the region. The idea of ethnic purity, which fueled so much violence, is a complete fantasy, a ghost. The DNA proves that everyone in the region is a mixture. Everyone shares the same deep, complex past. And this story of mixing isn't just a Balkan story. It's a human story. The DNA shows that Serbs are part of the great Slavic family, sharing a deep genetic bond with Poles, Slovaks, and Ukrainians through their shared R1A lineage. But they are also part of an even older ancient European family, sharing a bond with the first people to repopulate the continent after the Ice Age, a lineage they share with other ancient populations from the Pyrenees to the Black Sea. The genetic origin of the Serbs is not a story of isolation. It's a story of connection, not of purity, but of mixture, not of replacement, but of resilience and absorption. This is the new story, not just of the Balkans, but of all of us.
So let us return to our first question. What is a nation? The revolution of ancient DNA has given us a new, profound answer. A nation is not a simple, clean line from a single ancestor. It is a living tapestry, woven from countless threads. The genetic origin of the Serbs is a story of at least three great layers. First, a Roman cosmopolitan world, a melting pot of people from Anatolia, Europe, and Africa. Second, a vast, resilient indigenous population of Paleo-Balkan people who adopted Roman culture but kept their DNA. And third, a massive wave of Slavic migrants from the north. These two last groups did not destroy each other. They merged. They became one people. They created a new culture, forged a new language, and built a new identity. The old story of replacement is gone. The new story, the true story, is one of absorption and mixture. This DNA evidence does not erase identity, it enriches it. It shows that identity is not about a mythical pure past, it's about a shared journey. It proves that the bonds between the peoples of the Balkans are deeper than the divisions. Science has given us a time machine. It has allowed us to look past the conflicts of the last 100 years, past the empires of the last 1,000, and see a deeper truth. A 10,000-year-old story written in our bones. A story that says we are all connected. This isn't just the history of Serbia. It's the history of Germany, of Italy, of England, of every nation on Earth. Every one of us is a time traveler, carrying a living library of ancient DNA from hunter-gatherers, from farmers, from migrants, and from forgotten ancient civilizations. The old narratives are fading. The new story, told by genetics, archaeology, and history working together, is just beginning. And it's a story that is, in the end, far more wondrous, complex, and hopeful than any myth. The shocking genetic origin of the Serbs is that they are, like all of us, a people of survivors, a people of mixture, a people whose true ancestry is not one of simple lines, but of a rich, complex, and deeply interwoven tapestry, a story that was waiting, in silence, to finally be told. The truth is in the DNA, the truth is in the bones, and the truth is that our shared past is far greater than anything that divides us. The revolution in ancient DNA is happening right now. New discoveries are being made every month, rewriting the history books. What are your thoughts on these shocking genetic revelations? Does this change how you look at your own ancestry? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love exploring the mysteries of ancient DNA, history, and archaeology, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dive documentaries like this one. What should we investigate next? The origins of the Greeks? The mystery of the Basques? The genetic secrets of the pharaohs? Tell us in the comments. Thank you for watching.